Now, there are some major changes being made to the Liverpool squad this summer with the likes of Florian Wirtz, Jeremy Frimpong and now Milos Kerkez being added to the squad. But let's be honest with ourselves, the most exciting part of the transfer window isn't considering how these new signings will mesh together and how they'll help Liverpool in the defence of the Premier League title. No, the most exciting part for me is considering how these signings will affect Liverpool in terms of their compliance with the Premier League's rules and regulations as per the Premier League handbook. And I know you will all agree with me on that because I've seen all of your comments about the homegrown rules and the worries about the squad size. So I guess you guys are as into it as I am. So I wanted to really take a look at where Liverpool are up to in terms of that, what the squad building has looked like, where they're at in terms of homegrown players, non-homegrown players, and as I say, their ability to comply with those rules and name a squad for next season. So I had a little bit of a deep dive really into where they're up to, and I've got a few graphics to show you and a kind of a bit of an explainer on this, so hopefully that's helpful because as I say, a lot of you have been asking, so you must really be into it. So here we go, we're going to have a see where Liverpool are up to, and I think I'll start really with an explanation of the rules as they stand in terms of the Premier League squad sizes. So I'll bring up a graphic here, and as you can see here, each club can register a squad of up to 25 players. So 25, the absolute maximum number of players you can have in the squad, and a maximum within that 25 can be non-homegrown. Now, if you're wondering what a homegrown player is, that's a player who's defined as one registered with any English or Welsh club for 3 seasons before their 21st birthday. So to be homegrown, you have to be at an English or a Welsh club from a young age. Scottish clubs don't count, by the way, so they're not included in that. Same with Northern Irish clubs as well, in fact. So English or Welsh clubs for 3 seasons at a young age, and then you can be classed as homegrown. And not included in either rule are the under 21 players. So anyone born in January 2004 or after, that for next season this is, are not counted towards this limit. So you can have as many of those and you can kind of dip in and out your squad. You can use anyone from your academy without any worries if they're under the age of 21, or as I say, for next season it will be born in January 2004 or after. So important to note that in theory, of course, because of the squad size there, you can have 17 non-homegrown, 25 maximum. That means you can have 8 homegrown players as a maximum. But often, really, clubs name a lot fewer than that and don't actually go to the full 25-man squad. In fact, a good example actually is Liverpool last season. You look at the squad they submitted to the Premier League after the January window, and that was just 21-man squad, so 15 non-homegrown players and 6 homegrown. So 21-man squad, as I say, only 15 of the 17 non-homegrown, and never really felt last season like Liverpool were particularly short of numbers. It helped that they didn't have too many injuries, but it just shows you don't need to get to that maximum of 25 really to have a healthy looking squad, because Liverpool certainly did last season. So I want to have a look now at where Liverpool are up to with that in terms of meeting those rules of the Premier League. And I'm going to bring up a graphic now, this is the squad as it is now. And as you can see, obviously there's been a flurry of business at the start of the summer, hasn't there? And that means that, and I'll count them up for you, there are 18 non-homegrown players named there. So one more than would be allowed in a Premier League submitted squad. It would actually be 19, in fact, had they included Calvin Ramsey in this, but got to be realistic about this. I can't see Calvin Ramsey being at the club next season. He will either leave on a permanent deal or on a loan move, so not counting him towards this, because I just don't think he's a bit of a headache for Liverpool at all in this regard. You can also see Liverpool have got 7 homegrown players as well at the moment. Frimpong kind of a notable addition to that, because although he is Dutch, he was at Manchester City from the ages of 9 to 18, so of course he easily qualifies for that more than 3 seasons before his 21st birthday at a club in England or Wales. So he is a bit of a bonus to his signing, really, is that he is a homegrown player. That was one of the things that Liverpool considered was quite appealing about him, actually, that he qualified for that. So that is helpful. But of course, as I say, they've got 18 in that non-homegrown at the moment. So it's they've got some work to do really in terms of before they submit a squad to the Premier League. I guess it's clear really to say that Liverpool basically need to sell one non-homegrown player who isn't Calvin Ramsey because they've discounted him, just to submit the squad. And then if they want to sign any more non-homegrown players from that point, they'll need to sell 2. If they want to sign 2 non-homegrown players, they'll need to sell 3. So as you can see, they're slightly over that limit at the moment, and that is going to be a consideration for them going forward in the transfer market. Of course, fortunately, there are a few candidates to leave before the summer's up to free up some of those non-homegrown spots. So you look at Darwin Núñez at the moment, it looks like he's edging closer to a move to Napoli, and even if that doesn't go through, it would be a big surprise, I would say, if he was still here at the start of next season. You could say similar about Federico Chiesa. Didn't get the minutes last season. There's interest from Italy, and I think he's going to want to go and play. So again, he would open up a non-homegrown spot. And you have to say as well, you look at the left-backs there are 3 left-backs named in that squad there. And you have to say that, in terms of the first choice or first teamers anyway, and you have to say that one of them is going to go. Obviously, as I said, Robertson, he's British, but he's Scottish, so he doesn't count as a homegrown player. So he is taking up a spot there. Obviously, Kostas Tsimikas takes up a spot as well as a Greek player. So, one of those 2 you would expect is going to go. So that's going to open up another spot there, of course, because Liverpool need that at left back because they've signed Milos Kerkez recently. So, you would suddenly be, if you sold, Darwin Núñez, you sold Chiesa, you sold one of the 2 left backs, you would be in a position to add another 2 non-homegrown players without kind of doing any damage to the team, really, because you're losing players who you don't necessarily need for next season. We know what Núñez's status is. We know about Chiesa. Obviously, you don't need 3 first team left backs. So, as I say, quite easy to kind of open up those spots in the squads in terms of non-homegrown players and give yourself some capacity to maybe add some more. So that will, of course, be the plan. And it's, there's also a possibility, of course, in terms of just to quickly look at the non-homegrown, or rather the homegrown numbers as well. There's a possibility of slimming the squad even further there as well, because you look at the players that are named there: Harvey Elliott, Tyler Morton, Owen Beck. You feel that they are all kind of likely leavers. Joe Gomez, potentially, we haven't heard much about that at the moment, and maybe he's leaning towards staying at the moment. We're not quite sure. But there's potential for at least a few of those homegrown players to go. And so I guess for that reason, I kind of, with the homegrown ones, you're not in the position that you are with the non-homegrown where you need to shed a few. I think you would like to keep a few around. They are quite useful, aren't they? And you can see for that reason, really, if they do lose a few homegrown players, why Mark Gay appeals so much, because, of course, he would count for them towards that. He would be a homegrown player. It sorts out an issue in central defence without eating up a non-homegrown spot. So obviously Jarell Quansah wasn't eating up one of those spots. He was homegrown. To swap him out for someone who is also homegrown, I think it would be helpful. And of course, homegrown players, the beauty of them really is that it allows for you to have a bigger squad in general if you have a few of those, because they don't count that non-homegrown rule. And that limit of 8 is easily, and it's not a limit of 8 for them, is it? It's just that limit is enough, really. It gives you a big enough squad, so you don't need to fill these spots. But if you're losing a few of them, which Liverpool have, Quansah's gone, as I say, there's going to be a few more maybe follow him. Caoimhín Kelleher was also a homegrown player. It just makes sense to kind of at least fill a couple of those spots to make sure it kind of bulks the squad out a little bit. And I think, if you want to add a forward who's non-homegrown, for example, adding a homegrown centre-back means you only need to sell 2 non-homegrown players in that case. So as I say, it makes a lot of sense to kind of work it like that. And I do think, on that homegrown topic really, is that is going to be a consideration for Liverpool in this window, and something they may look to add a couple, because there's just so many whose futures are up in the air and may join Quansah, may join Kelleher in going out of the exit door. So that's certainly one to keep an eye on. And of course, there are other ways around this ruling as well, in terms of how you can keep a slightly bigger squad without kind of adding too many non-homegrown players. And there's been talk, hasn't there, recently, Liverpool are looking, despite the interest in Gay, for maybe an even younger central defender to come in. I know that's a market they've been looking at for a long while, really. If you look at some of the names linked, it's clear that they're looking for someone who's a long-term option in that position, someone they can develop but maybe won't expect too many minutes at first, but has got real long-term potential. And it's interesting, if they do get someone who's particularly young, then it's not a factor for them worrying about fitting them into this squad. So a really good example of this is Jorrel Hatto at Ajax. He is only 19, so it would be 2 seasons before you actually need to register him as a non-homegrown player. So you could get, and there'll be a few others out there who fit that bill really, young central defenders who are 20, 19, 18, who come in, they wouldn't expect too many minutes, they don't take up a place in your squad. And you can develop them. So I'm sure that's a market Liverpool are looking at. And as I say, something for them to think about around this, or maybe not to think about, because it would be very easy to fit them into the squad. And of course, those under-21 rules also mean that the likes of Stefan Bajcetic, Trey Ione, Jayden Danns, James McConnell do not need to be registered as well, although I would say there are big chances for loans with Danns and McConnell in particular. And of course, another one who's really worth mentioning here is the summer signing Armin Peichi, who obviously he is looking like, with Harvey Davies having left on loan, maybe an option for third choice goalkeeper, but because of his age, because he's not he will come under that under 21 rule, he won't be taking up a place in the squad as a non-homegrown player. So that is particularly useful for Liverpool, I'd say. So I guess if I was to kind of summarise the situation for you, really, I'd say Liverpool aren't in a bad position. Yes, they need to open up some spots, but I think a lot of that is going to happen naturally. As I say, so many players who are candidates to leave, who are both homegrown and non-homegrown, who will open up spots in the squad to be filled. So it's not going to be, I don't think, too much of a stretch for Liverpool to do this, albeit I think they would probably like to get a couple in homegrown as part of the business that they're doing going forward, if they do lose as many homegrown as expected. But as I say, Mark Gay's on the agenda, isn't he, as a potential signing? Maybe they go back for someone like an Anthony Gordon, we'll have to see. But they are largely in control of the situation. I don't think it's going to massively dictate what they have to do, outside of maybe wanting to add a couple of homegrown players, because as I say, those non-homegrown spots are going to open up pretty naturally anyway. So hopefully that's a decent explainer of where they're up to. Hopefully that's helped give you a good idea where they're up to. Do let me know your thoughts on all that, and in fact give me some recommendations for homegrown players you would like to see signed moving forward in this window. Always interested to hear your thoughts, and if you can like and you could subscribe, that's massively appreciated, and I'll see you guys very soon.